Want to see two big men with big with big chests. And big muscles. Bumping meat. That's why I'm here. That's why I watched wrestling as a kid. You want your 5-star matches? You want your 30-minute classics? Not me. Big meaty men slapping meat. I'll wrap it up. Woo.
Hey, Lefko here, and welcome to the bonus episode of Big Meaty Men Slapping Meat in March. This is the Retro Wrestling Game Tournament, where we are going to take 16 classic wrestling games, some very retro, maybe there's a few in there not so retro, and we're going to make them fight it, slug it out in the tournament, and see which is our favorite. And of course, me, I enjoy my wrestling games, but I found two other people that I think enjoy them even more than I do, and they've got massive collections of these. So, guys, if you want to come in and introduce yourselves.
You're first.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I'm Soups, and yeah, love wrestling games. Played them, forever. I think my first game I was like 4. Yeah, just love collecting wrestling games.
And I am your boy B-Rob, host of the Random Rambles with Rob podcast and co-host to RBR Weekly Wrestling Talk. So my affinity for professional wrestling goes back to me watching as a wee lad all the way up until now, my early 40s. So the bit about the collection is one, because Soups is my arch nemesis now that I just found out, and I have to have more games than him. And I am, which one is it where you like to harm yourself? Is that masochist?
Masochism, I think, or masochism.
Yeah. I'm one of those, because like I'm punishing myself trying to acquire all these wrestling games for no good apparent reason.
I think you may have passed me, actually.
I know. I didn't want to bring it up, but you did, so yes. I know you can catch up here pretty soon because I'm on break. I'm finna go on vacation.
Oh, right on.
Of course, you guys could call up Guinness and have them come out and validate your collection to see which one's winning.
Yeah,
there's probably a third guy we don't even know about who's got everything.
You're right. Because I literally, for a side tangent, when I started this journey or whatever, I come across you and everything through the Secret Levels Discord and whatnot. Shout outs to Goobs and Toby. And when I was, it just like fate would have it that I'll be on Twitter or X or whatever the fuck you call it. Oh, I'm sorry. Can we curse?
Oh, absolutely. Go for it.
Shit ass dick, bitch. Yeah, but somebody was on Twitter downsizing their collection, and they put out all their wrestling games, and it was just like, at the time, it was my hit list of shit that I wanted to get in my collection very badly. And I DM'd this guy. I openly tweeted him. I tweeted people that retweeted his tweet, tried to get in contact with this dude, and he would not contact me back so I could buy shit from him. Sorry, son of a bitch.
Oh, I hate that whenever someone posts something for sale and you're like, yeah, I want that, and you get a hold of them and they just completely ghost you.
Yeah, like, he's like, hey, I need some money. I'm trying to sell this. I was like, good, because I want to buy this. And I DM'd him, and I tweeted him, and I DM'd him, and I DM'd other people, and I tweeted other people who might have known him. I was like, he ain't say shit. And I was like, you sorry bastard.
Be like, you can't be ghosting me, man. This is not an online dating website. You only ghost there.
Yeah, for real. And it's just like, why? And this is another side or whatever. It kills me when you have a social media profile that is public to everyone, and you put your contact information, whether it be an email or a separate account, or saying DM me, or DMs are open or whatever, so people can contact you. You make this public knowledge. And then when people use those avenues, you don't keep track of them. You don't maintain them. You don't use them. I was like, you sorry sons of bitches.
Mm-hmm.
Now, how bad would it piss you off if I told you that he sold all those to me?
I would find a way to jump
It's
through the
not
internet
true,
and choke you. I know. Well, I mean, I'm not mad about it now because most of the things that he posted that one time, I think I have now. So I guess it worked out in a way.
Well, for our tournament, I chose 4 games, and both of you guys chose 6 because you guys have the larger collection, and that's the only way I could figure out to divide 16 into 3 people.
Mm-hmm.
So, are you guys ready to go?
I am ready.
Okay.
Ready as I'll ever be.
So, if you're listening on right now, the thumbnail for this podcast will have the beginning 16 bracket. So, we're going to start with seeds 1 and 2 in round 1. WWE All-Stars versus Virtual Pro Wrestling 2. Guys, what are your thoughts?
So let me see here. Did I close the bracket? Oh, there we go. So all right, this is where, like, when we get into the collection and why we started and when we started and all kinds of stuff. So my collection started because I wanted to own all the Nintendo 64 wrestling games. And then upon doing research or whatever, I found out there was more than No Mercy and WCW versus NWO and, you know, WrestleMania 2000 or whatever, because those primarily were the games that I grew up with. So when I found and did my research on the wrestling games for Nintendo 64, I found out that there was 16 of them. 14 really, because 2 of them are sumo wrestling. So I don't know if we want to count those or not, because as I look in my Wrestling with Pickles, I said Pixels book about all professional wrestling video games, the sumo wrestling games aren't in here. So I just keep those at a side. But
I thought you just wanted to bring up Pickles because you know how much I hate him.
yeah, Pickle Rick. I'm sorry about your pickle phobia.
Oh, it's horrible.
But I never got to play Virtual Pro Wrestling 2. I didn't really even knew it existed, but damn, doing research, you know, it's kind of like WCW versus, you know, the World or some shit like that. So I have familiarity with that game. So I was like, maybe I'm not too far off then. But from what I played of the American version, or the equivalent, is it's kind of what got me started on Nintendo 64. So I have fond memories of that game, but not this one specifically. Now, WWE All-Stars, shit, I loved it because it took what I felt was like WrestleMania, the arcade game, which is here on our list, and fused it and, you know, kind of made it more modern. It had like just a small dash of Def Jam or whatever, which is also on the list. And I enjoyed the glow up per se. So, I mean, out of the two, I'm going to lean more towards WWE All-Stars.
All right, so we've got 1 vote in for All-Stars. Next up, Suits.
Yeah, you know, I grew up like most wrestling fans who had an N64. Those games were like the end-all be-all. That's the greatest wrestling game that'll ever be released.
Dude.
And you just feel like there's not much they could do to make it better. Virtual Pro Wrestling.
I skipped school to play No Mercy and WCW versus NWO Revenge. I skipped high school to do that shit.
Yeah. So I found a cheap N64 and I brought it to work one day, and I brought my copy of No Mercy and set it up at lunch. And I only had a half hour. It was enough to challenge 2 people to a match. And the boss said, hey, no more. You guys are too crazy in there with that. So, Virtual Pro Wrestling 2 is really quite an incredible game when you look at it. It's got everything you need. It's got everything you need. There's a mask editor, which was not in any of the North American releases. It's got MMA stuff. You can combo strikes from a grapple. I honestly don't think there's much you could have done to add to it. It didn't have a cage match, but cage matches aren't really a thing in Japan.
Mm-hmm.
It's like an incredible game. Anyone who hasn't played it should try it. If you love No Mercy, you're going to love this. WWE All-Stars. I mean, man. Incredible. Fantastic game. Obviously, it's got to be to make the top 16, right? So,
Sure as hell ain't goddamn Battleground.
No, thankfully not. The graphics are awesome. Like, I can't even begin to describe them. It takes what you expect a wrestler to be. Huge, jacked up, muscles on muscles on muscles. And just picture perfect for what you expect a wrestler to be. And all the moves are super over the top. You got legends battling it out with current day guys. You got a cool little story mode where it pits a legend versus a modern wrestler. So, I mean, going into this, I knew it was going to be a hard pick. I think I'm going to go Virtual Pro Wrestling, though.
Ooh. So already I have a deciding vote. Oh, God.
Yeah, you do.
Okay, so here's the deal. I love All-Stars quite a bit. It was one of those games to where they took the game and they amplified the way everything looked, and I loved it. Like, everything was definitely, like, it had a cartoonish feel to it that was done in a great way. Virtual Pro Wrestling 2, on the other hand, I had not played it before it hit the top 10, so I cannot talk much about it as far as nostalgia. What I can say, though, is that whenever I played it, it reminded me of WCW vs. the World on PlayStation, which, to me, is probably one of my favorite wrestling games in PlayStation 1, period. So this is a hard one for me, too, because it's a game that I don't have any nostalgia for, versus a game I have some nostalgia for, but the one I don't have any nostalgia for reminds me of a game I have a mountain of nostalgia for.
Sounds like you're in a pickle.
So yeah, this is a tough one. I'm probably going to go with All-Stars in this one, though, because when it comes to Virtual Pro Wrestling 2, as much as I did enjoy it, and I really did enjoy it, I would still probably go back and play the WCW vs. the World version on the PlayStation 1 over it. I love the extended roster that has some of the made-up characters that were based off of real-life characters. I love the unlockables in it, and it's got the nostalgia factor for me. So, through no fault of Virtual Pro Wrestling 2, which I did enjoy, I do have to give this one All-Stars.
Yeah.
That's fair.
I mean, you can't go wrong with either. Even when Soups was daggone giving the layout for Virtual Wrestling 2, I was just like, maybe I should change my mind.
You really can't go wrong with either of them.
Mm-hmm.
Either way, you're going to have a good time.
It depends on how you feel that day.
Exactly.
Yeah, it was a hard choice for me because you guys have been the ones that pointed out Virtual Pro Wrestling 2, and I really enjoyed my time with it. I thought it was done really, really well. So whenever it came up against All-Stars in the bracket, I'm like, oh god, that's going to be a hard one. All right. If you guys hit refresh in your web browsers, are you guys getting the refreshed bracket?
Let's see. Yes, it is. All-Stars number 1 in the quarterfinal.
Okay, I just wanted to verify that this was working right. Wasn't sure if it would work at first, so... Okay, so the second match of round one, we have Def Jam Vendetta versus WWF WrestleFest. So if one of you guys want to start with your opening thoughts on it. This one's not as hard of a decision for me. I'm just warning you guys now.
Yeah, me neither.
This one is not a difficult decision for me. I've never actually played WrestleFest. Every time I've tried to emulate it, it's crashed on me. And like when people look at me, they go, that guy's into heavy metal. I got a long beard, I got long hair, I wear denim vest, all this jazz. Deep down in my heart, though, hip hop and rap.
Yeah, you got the denim. You remind me of Roman Reigns' old theme music. Denim, denim, jeans, denim, denim.
There's honestly nothing you can do to stop me picking from Def Jam here. It's just the No Mercy ramped up. It's a little bit of All Star. It's a little bit of No Mercy. It's a little bit of Def Jam Rap Star.
Yeah.
It's incredible. I mean, I was wrestling with myself whether I should pick Fight for New York.
Hey man, don't be wrestling with yourself on camera
though. Fight for New York was originally going to be one of my 6 that I chose, but because Def Jam Vendetta was already on it, and Fight for New York only has one stage with a ring, and, you know, it's actually more like a mixed martial arts game than a wrestling game.
That's why it's not in our wrestling book, Bible.
Yeah. If I had to pick between Vendetta and Fight for New York, I'm picking Fight for New York.
Oh, yes.
But that's not on here. Vendetta is. That's my pick.
Word. And I echo a lot of sentiments that Soups have. Because I hadn't played WrestleFest coming up because, you know, that's when arcades were prevalent to me. And this was an arcade game. There were some ports for console, I believe, at some point, or through emulation or some shit like that. But I never really got into emulation. I always had the hardware or whatever. And so, you know, I never really got to play this game because the arcades that I frequent didn't have this game. Most recently, I'm dipping into emulation for my own sake or whatever. I'm trying to figure out how to work Raspberry Pis and all this other stuff. I put my hands on a lot of shit. I got a lot of hobbies, but WrestleFest was the first game that I snagged to try to emulate and try to play through and whatnot. Just because of his elusiveness alone, I'm gonna lean toward Def Jam Vendetta. And just like Soup said, you know, if Fight for New York was on here, it would be Fight for New York. So we're gonna stay in the Def Jam family, and I'm gonna pick Vendetta.
All right, so by default, Vendetta's gonna win. So my thoughts are gonna be a little superfluous here, but let's go anyway. Def Jam Vendetta was, to me, a game that came out of nowhere. Because originally I'm like, we're going to make a hip-hop, rap, fighting, and wrestling. What are we doing? But the game's fun. It's really good, and it's really well made. I enjoy it. Nostalgia factor, though, my vote goes for WWF WrestleFest. First time I had played it was in a Big Lots. They happened to have the arcade in there, and just the attract screen, the music that started, it was just huge and grand. And it was a game that young Lefko, at like 6 or 7 years old, had no problem playing. You can pop a quarter in, there's only 2 buttons, both of them do attacks. Depending on how you hold the stick whenever you grapple determines what kind of move you'll do.
I'm just kind of amazed by your Big Lots having an arcade machine in it.
Oh, dude, it was crazy. It was the only one in there, too. But this game left such an impact on me that whenever MAME came up for emulation, this is one of the first games that I made sure to get running. And whenever I started collecting, I never did find the arcade machine, but I did buy the JAMA PCB board for this game. And I could actually pop it into my Magic Sword arcade machine and play WrestleFest on it. So, just for the nostalgia factor, the roster is absolutely the perfect snapshot of the WWF at that time. It's dirt easy to walk up to and play. It takes a little bit to master. But if you have a pro at it and the beginner that's also playing, the beginner does actually have a bit of a shot. He can button mash until he kind of figures out what he's doing. So, my personal vote is WrestleFest, but 2 versus 1 Def Jam Vendetta moves into the quarterfinals. So, we have our first matchup for the quarterfinals locked in. We've got 3 more to decide. The next matchup for round 1 is WrestleMania 19 versus SmackDown. Here comes the pain.
All right, so Soups went first last time. I gotta speak on this. I never played any of the GameCube wrestling games. Or if I did, it was just like so long ago that I don't even freaking remember. There was a weird rift in time to where you had the GameCube wrestling games, and then you had the OG Xbox wrestling games that, we got one of those on the list. We got one of those on the list. We'll speak on that when we get to it, but like, I missed that whole stitch of time as far as the wrestling games go. But on the other hand, when it comes to SmackDown, here comes the pain. I mean, it was wild or whatever. I think this was the one where like Booker T stepped on the stage and the pyro threw him across the screen and shit. Just all the backstage shenanigans, riding motorcycles and doing all kinds of crazy shit. It looked like they're trying to bring that back, that feeling in 2K24, and I can very much appreciate that. I mean, whenever you infuse like silliness into pro wrestling, I think it's a good combo, because like video game wise, it makes sense, because like none of that shit is real. I mean, arguably people will say real life pro wrestling isn't real. That shit is real. I got like battle scars to prove it in my training and shit. But SmackDown Here Comes the Pain was just batshit crazy. I appreciate that. I love that about games. That's what drew me to All Stars, what drew me to the arcade game and stuff like that. So my pick for this bracket will be SmackDown Here Comes the Pain.
I mean, so behind the scenes, little peel back behind the curtain, these were both my picks. It's hard to choose.
I mean, babies.
You said it, man. Like, SmackDown Here Comes the Pain. That was a literal game changer. You went from SmackDown 1 and 2, which were, I mean, 1 was basically a demo for 2. Mm-hmm. They came out in the same year. It was, it was an upgrade from 1, but not by much. Then you jump to the PS2. You have Just Bring It. You have Shut Your Mouth. They're great games. Don't get me. Here Comes the Pain. That pushed wrestling games to another level.
Yeah.
It really, what you said about it, I couldn't add to it. It's really, you said it so perfectly.
Just think about that run of games up until Here Comes the Pain. So we got Raw 2, goddamn the WrestleMania 21 game. You got all these
terrible.
You got all these GameCube games. You got WCW versus the World. You got goddamn Mayhem, Nitro, Thunder, and all that other crazy shit. And then you got Raw, Warzone, and all that shit, or whatever. Those games were like cut from the same cloth, and they were all shit for the most part, except for the WCW game, to where you hit the taunt button and everybody do the YMCA. I like that shit or whatever. That game was crazy in a different way, not like Here Comes the Pain, but definitely its own thing.
Yeah. So I'm gonna tell you right now, you're missing out by not trying the GameCube games. They're
I have 2 GameCubes to my right sitting on my desk right now.
Fantastic. Get them up and running and play these games. WrestleMania 19 has an insane story mode that sees you go on top of buildings and throwing security guards off them like it was a battle royal, throwing security guards to their death off the top of a building.
Oh, like Baron Corbin did to AJ Styles and Rey Mysterio in that one Money in the Bank.
Yeah. It's an insane story. It's probably the best of the GameCube games. And honestly, as a wrestling fan, you do yourself a disservice not playing it.
Very well. It's on the docket.
That being said, though, I mean, you gotta pick Here Comes the Pain. It changed everything. It changed everything. Beyond people who didn't like wrestling were buying this game because it was so good. You know, you get a couple of years of good games off the back of Here Comes the Pain. You know, you get SmackDown vs. Raw 2008, which isn't so great, but you know, it takes a long time before wrestling games are great again after that. And you know, it's probably the peak of wrestling games up until I don't know, probably Def Jam actually.
Yeah.
So that's 2 for SmackDown. Alright, so my thoughts on this one. During this era, I did not have a GameCube or a PlayStation 2. I either was on PC or Xbox. So I missed both of these games until they hit the list, and then I had to play them, and there's only one option I had to play them.
Do what you want, 'cause a pirate is free. You are a pirate.
That being said, both of them really caught my eye. Like, I thought that both were really good. That being said, SmackDown had that long line of games behind it that felt like a big culmination up to Here Comes the Pain. The GameCube game kind of just stood on its own in a way, and it was good. I thought it was a blast. But just for the fact that, you know, you have the big long history behind the SmackDown series, whereas WrestleMania kind of felt like a one and done game to me. I also have to go to SmackDown.
Clean sweep.
Okay, so this one's going to be a big one, and again, this is the era where I did not have this console, but I did emulate these in the past. WCW versus NWO Revenge versus WWF No Mercy, and this might be, in my opinion, the hardest decision in this entire tournament.
Yeah.
So WCW NWO Revenge was the very first game that I remember being absolutely hyped for. I was on IGN every week at my grandma's house on her dial-up computer, looking at pictures, seeing who they were announcing. I remember when they announced Mortis, and I was like, oh, this is incredible! Wrestling can never top this! Fantastic game. Awesome. And then you lose the license. You lose the license, and they go to EA, and it's so tragic. And the thing, though, is that they pick up the WWF license. They release WrestleMania 2000, which is fantastic. I don't think it gets its flowers. It's overshadowed by Revenge and No Mercy, but it's not on the list. These two are. No Mercy is incredible. The addition of the running grapple, the storyline, the branching storyline, never been seen in wrestling games before. Truly incredible piece of work. I mean, I love Revenge. I love how every character feels different. You don't really get that with No Mercy. A lot of them play... Like, if you play as Chyna, it's the same as playing Steve Austin. If you play as Mortis, it's different than playing as Hulk Hogan. You know, you got a lot more kicks. You feel a little more agile. Hulk Hogan feels stronger. You know, he's been taking his vitamins, saying his prayers, drinking his milk.
Mm-hmm.
I think I'm going to go Revenge.
Word. So I said before that WCW versus NWO Revenge was the reason in high school that I skipped school to go home and play this shit. I'm in high school. I'm about to become an adult or whatever. And I skipped classes, got in my car, drove home with a group of friends, and we had to work it out to where, like, all right, who mom or dad works this time during our school schedule? All right, we're going to your house. And the Nintendo 64 would be in tow. We would have 4 controllers, and we would all be in that bitch playing Revenge. Most memorable moment for that, we was at my homeboy Quentin's house, and we were in the room playing this game, and it was I think we were playing just, you know, the standard 4-man, and it was Kevin Nash and Rey Mysterio in the ring. Rey Mysterio had the taunt to where I think he could do like a little cartwheel, then he'd drop to his knees and kind of celebrate soccer style. And Kevin Nash come off the ropes, big boot to the back of the head, knock him out, game over. And I was just like, what? And I have more memories like that with WCW versus NWO Revenge. Just, I had Raven's Flock on there because they have like the stable columns in there and everything. So you had the Flock, NWO, WCW, and things like that. And there was in the Flock, they had the big guy with the flannel, Reese. And we had a coach at our high school. His name was Coach Reese. So that was our joke. We changed, because you can go in there, you can highly customizable. You can change people's names. You can change their attire. And we changed Reese to Coach Reese. And we would just do silly shit like that. We even like co-opted certain characters to be us, and we would change them to be us and everything. And we would play with our avatars, so to speak, for different games and everything. No Mercy, from Revenge to that point of No Mercy, it became a well-polished game. And I was just amazed by the additions that they put onto it and everything. Like you said, the run and grapple and stuff like that, and just the tweaks and everything they've done. Just even to where, like, at Idol, the characters would just have separate animations and everything that wasn't really prevalent in the games previous. So, I mean, as far as a well put together game, I would give it to No Mercy. But the one that I had the most fun playing and the most memories attached to is my pick, WCW versus NWO Revenge.
So for me on this one, even though I didn't have an N64, at the time I still had a subscription to Nintendo Power. And I remember flipping through the magazine and looking at the pictures of this game. So at the time I was planning on buying an N64. I ended up going PlayStation, but I was amazed by how this game looked. And then fast forward to when I finally did get to play it through emulation. One thing that caught my eye, and this may sound weird, but it had the WCW look for the time. Like, I felt like if you watched Raw versus Nitro, Nitro felt a bit more industrial, is what I'm thinking. Yeah. And the game nailed the look, which is something that sometimes the WWF games couldn't pull off. It also, I gotta bring up the fact, every wrestler feels different. No one feels like a cookie-cutter version of another wrestler in the game. Everyone has a unique feel. There's tons of customization options, and to me, WCW NWO Revenge is probably the pinnacle that WCW got with their video games.
Yeah.
No Mercy builds on that and is an awesome game. And I had a lot of fun playing it, but I feel like I gotta give it to WCW versus NWO, just because this is absolutely the best that they got. And it was so much fun playing that. Whereas WWF No Mercy kind of kept going for a little bit.
Sweep.
Absolutely.
I'm gonna tell you. if you want listens, you clip the fact that we put Revenge over No Mercy, people are going to be tuning in to listen to these whack jobs.
See, I thought I was going to be the only one to choose WCW versus NWO, but I had to think about too, because No Mercy is a blast.
Oh yeah,
it's fun.
Nothing taken away from No Mercy. I mean, I've spent hours in No Mercy, probably more than Revenge even. But I mean, everyone felt different in Revenge.
Yep.
Yeah, and it's just like if I attempted emulation, or whenever I actually got the Nintendo 64 and started hunting for these games, Revenge was the first one that I went for over No Mercy.
I think it won partially due to the nostalgia factor, because all three of us have really good memories of that game.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we're over halfway through the first round. Next up, I don't think this one's going to be as hard of a fight, but we'll see. The original Rumble Roses versus Saturday Night Slam Masters.
So for me, I didn't really get to touch Saturday Night Slam Masters when I was a young lad. This was Super Nintendo, so I had Super Nintendo. I wasn't really playing too many wrestling games. I think I played Raw or something like that. But at that time, my fandom as a professional wrestling fan was solely WWF. So it was just like this game wasn't even on my radar, because it wasn't WWF, So it slipped me by. I haven't even, since having it in the collection, I haven't even popped it in my system and played it yet. But Rumble Roses, on the other hand, big titty bitches, just flopping around, very Dead or Alive-esque, So that caught my attention for 360 as an older lad or whatever. I was in what 360, so I was in my early 20s, mid 20s when that came out. So I mean, the appeal of just beautiful women doing wrestling shit it grabbed me immediately. Just the booby physics and everything.
And titties. Ass and titties.
Exactly right. That's exactly where my mind was in my 20s. So just on the simple fact, not to drone on too long, Rumble Roses got my pick.
All right, one for Rumble.
So, picture this. The year is 2004.
Picture this.
Fresh-faced 19-year-old Stoops picks up Rumble Roses from his local Rogers Video, goes on down to his best friend's house, plugs it in at a giant house party, and people go, "What is this? Stripper wrestling?" Yeah, pretty much. It's beyond the looks of the competitors, which, who doesn't like that? It plays really well.
Yeah.
It's got some strange, levels. You got your wrestling rings and whatnot, but you also have your mud pits, and, it knows what it's doing. I'll put it at that. It knows what it's doing.
Yep.
Saturday Night Slam Masters was a game that I played as a kid. I remember renting it, bringing it home, playing it, fell in love with it instantly. End of the weekend, had to return it. Every weekend after, attempts were made to rent it. Always rented out. When they decided to clear out their Super Nintendo, it was the first game gone. Never had it growing up. I have it in my collection now for a couple different systems. Growing up, I played it on Super Nintendo, so I was missing. The Sega Genesis had extra characters, had an extra deathmatch which was, you didn't see that in wrestling games at that time. It was awesome. I mean, it was a little more of a beat 'em up than a wrestling game, but I mean, there's characters in there that I'll never forget. You got Oni and Big Titan and Rasta Man. It's incredible. Like, you got all these cool looking characters. The characters in there, some of them are based off guys, some of them aren't, but they all have a memorable look. That being said, I'm going Rumble Roses because titties are awesome.
Yeah.
All right, so Rumble Roses is one of those games that it does have some decent gameplay mechanics, but that's not what draws you into the game. Obviously, what draws you into the game are the women whenever you come in. Like, I remember the
Damn titties.
the cowgirl wrestler.
Mhm.
She was always my main pick for this game, and obviously you know what gets you in the door with this game, but underneath that, it does have some pretty decent gameplay mechanics. It's a good wrestling game with the appeal of, a massive amount of sex appeal.
Yeah.
Saturday night.
Oh, I forgot to. Sorry to interrupt.
Oh,
I forgot to make mention of a very cool thing in the game. There's a story mode. Each character has their own story, and when you beat that story mode, you unlock either the face or heel version of that character, who also has their own story mode. So it's very replayable.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, again, the game knows what's getting you in the door, but there is more meat to it.
Mhm.
There's more meat to it than big titty meat.
Yeah.
Saturday Night Slam Masters, fantastic game, and it was easily made in Capcom's golden era, where it felt like they could not make a bad game. And same thing with this game. On top of that, it's not a typical wrestling game. The closest thing that I can think of to it would be like WrestleMania, the arcade game. But even then, it doesn't play exactly like that game. I love the fact that there's a bit of lore to it. Like, you got to play as Hagar before he became the mayor of Metro City in Final Fight. I love that little touch to it.
If you look online, there is a Streets of Rage. I don't know if it's like a ROM hack or anything like that, but there's a Streets of Rage and Saturday Night Slam Master combo game.
Oh,
to where you could play with Saturday Night Slam Master people in Streets of Rage.
I'll have to look that up. That sounds like a blast. The game came out for a lot, too. It came out in the arcade. You had the Super Nintendo and Genesis version. The Genesis version had the extra deathmatch mode. It was a blast. Rumble Roses, again, it got you in the door with the sex appeal, but then there was a nice wrestling game underneath of it. Slam Masters, on the other hand, was a wrestling game, but it was also kind of more of a fighting game than a wrestling game. It got you in the door with the appeal of wrestling, but it was closer to something like Street Fighter 2 in the way. Harder decision for me. I'm actually going to go Saturday Night Slam Masters in this one, though, just because it's also got the more of a nostalgic appeal for me, even though I did play a lot of Rumble Roses as well. I loved Saturday Night Slam Masters, especially in two-player mode, and in its defense. I feel like Saturday Night Slam Masters is a better two-player game just because a player can sit down, grab a controller, and know the controls and moves within a few minutes. Whereas Rumble Roses, it's not complicated, but it will take a little bit more time to get in there and figure it out.
Yeah, this is true. I don't know if Oops can probably speak to it or not or whatever, because we're on this journey together or whatever. Saturday Night Slam Masters is the American version of Muscle Bomber wrestling.
Yes, that is correct.
Yeah, so I have no attachment to that game as well, but like looking at our Wrestling Pixel Bible or whatever, I see that it's the equivalent. I guess in the Japanese version or whatever, there's more, I guess, Japanese wrestling or influence.
Yeah. There's a little more. I mean, obviously, Capcom's like a Japanese company. They're gonna lean more towards what's known to them. So, yeah, the Super Famicom version a little bit different, not groundbreakingly different, but yeah, it's got a little bit of a change to it.
And then, like, what kind of pissed me off, but not really, because I had both consoles, is games weren't really console exclusive. They came out for both systems, but one had more or less than the other, and I didn't like that.
I can see that.
Yeah. I don't know what's going on in my neck of the woods, but finding Sega games, impossible. Finding Super Nintendo, no problem at all.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because like by comparison, because I remember the most notable differences was when Mortal Kombat started coming out or whatever. You had the Sega version, you had the Super Nintendo version. The Super Nintendo version was more PG-13. The Sega version with the cheat code was the rated R version. You could put the blood in there and do the gnarly fatalities and everything, to where the Super Nintendo, they didn't have none of that shit.
I talked about that recently on an episode of Afterglow, because I have the Sega Genesis version, and I felt it was easily superior from the Super Nintendo just because it had all the content.
Yeah, I think the chips in the Genesis are able to hold a little more information.
Doritos?
Yes.
Cool Ranch.
Yeah.
Definitely Cool Ranch. Fuck sweet chili heat. Those are awful.
I kind of like the roulette ones. Those are interesting.
The problem with that is the spicy ones aren't spicy.
They're not as spicy as they should have been. I expected a ghost pepper chip.
Yeah. If you're going to play roulette, play it proper.
So, moving on, we have our next matchup, which will be WWE 13 versus WrestleMania, the arcade game.
WrestleMania, the arcade game, was my favorite wrestling game for the longest time. It still might be... It's in the top 5 for sure. It's just completely different than any other wrestling game. Even In Your House, which came after it, was the same style, pales in comparison. It's living in its shadow of WrestleMania, the arcade game.
Mm-hmm.
Now, growing up, I was a Nintendo family. We had a Sega Genesis. We didn't really use it that much. I had the Super Nintendo version growing up, so I had no idea Bam Bam Bigelow and Yokozuna were even in the game.
See, and that goes back to what I was just saying a little while ago. It's just like the console exclusivity of it all.
Yeah. So, I'm going to be 100% honest. I didn't know they were in the game until, 5 years ago. It was that long. Because I've never played the Sega version, never played the PlayStation version. It was, it was All-Stars before All-Stars.
Mm-hmm.
And you had Razor Ramon throwing those crazy, I don't know what they were.
He was throwing
razor blade arms.
Yeah.
And Undertaker shooting souls out of his hands. Come on, what's not to love?
Yeah, bashing you over the head with a tombstone.
You've got a who's who of wrestling at the time. You got Doink the Clown, you got Razor Ramon, you got The Undertaker, Bret Hart, Shawn Michaels, Lex Luger, and then, Yokozuna and Bam Bam Bigelow, who, again, I had no idea were even in the game. Incredible game. Phenomenal. I to this day would love not a remaster but a remake. I don't know if they could nail it though, to be honest.
Yeah, this is true.
Need NetherRealm to come back to work on it.
Hey, WWE 13. This might piss some people off. I think it's the last good mainline WWE game.
Yeah, because I mean, they just became copy and paste.
Yeah, so this might send you off the edge here, Rob. There's two versions of WWE 13.
Wow.
There's a THQ version and a 2K version.
I did not know that.
Yeah, so halfway through the cycle, 2K took over.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
And,
fuck.
I mean, every game after this, 2K just put on top of the 13 engine. And they kept adding more and more and more until we reached 2K20 and it broke.
Hold on. Let me hold on. I gotta look in my cabinet and see which one I got.
It's on the spine. So 13 to me.
All right, I got the THQ one. I got to get the 2K one now. God damn it.
13 to me is peak WWE. You know, the roster at the time was solid. The addition of all the legends, you had the what was it? Yeah, that was the Stone Cold year. I mean, one of my favorite all-time wrestlers, Stone Cold Steve Austin, playing through his career. What's not to love? Great moments relived. And this was before 2K came in and made it so half the match was video footage. It's the best WWE game we've gotten in a long time. I mean, 13, that's over 10 years ago.
I just purchased it for $10.
Overall, though, I'm going to give it to WrestleMania, the arcade game. That game will forever have a spot in my heart.
Word. So, the originator of WWE All-Stars, for me, was WrestleMania, the arcade game. I no shit played this in the arcade. So I got the full on experience of this game or whatever. So I seen all the characters here. And whenever I did actually get to play it on the console, I was like, hey, we missing some motherfuckers. You know? So that was kind of pissy for me. And then like there were so many different variations of this game, and all of them were different. Like you were saying, the Super Nintendo was different from the Sega version. Hell, they got a PlayStation version of this game. Then they got a 32X version of this game. And then I think they got a Sega Saturn, a Dreamcast, I think, maybe?
I don't think it was on Dreamcast.
Okay, yeah, but Sega Saturn for sure. So it's like this game was spread out amongst all the consoles or whatever. And I can remember it never holding a candle to the actual arcade version of it. Like the no shit cabinet gameplay versus any of the consoles gameplay or whatever. I haven't went back and revisited in quite some time. I have it, the version for Super Nintendo. I mean, not Super Nintendo, PlayStation. And the only thing I've done with it was boot it up to make sure it worked. And that was pretty much it for me. WWE 2K13. Now that you bring that up, I got to say it that way. But I can remember just the promotion for it or whatever. CM Punk at the podium, and just like he was hot at that time. And I was really into Punk. And I think I may have gotten this game on the strength of that alone. because we were not too long removed from him leaving, the series of matches with John Cena, back with the title, and they had the 2 titles and all that stuff. So that was cool. And then to follow that up by putting him on the cover of the video game with all the promotion and hype around it and whatnot. So it was cool. But for my pick, I'm going to go with WrestleMania, the arcade game, because I have more fond memories of that, to where, like how you were saying, the WWE games, especially when they became numbered from 12 to 13 and so on up until 2K24, copy paste. And 2K is a copy paste machine because, they have success with their NBA series or whatnot because how they just maintain and update and just apply that factor to that. And I don't think it translates well enough to the WWE games and whatnot. I don't think they can pay that level of detail to the wrestling games because they're so invested in their other property with NBA, and that makes the most money for them or whatever. So it's like, I don't think they're going to make a separate division for WWE games and shit or whatever. But that remains to be seen moving forward. Look at all the additions that we got with the new game that's about to come out and everything and whatnot. So there's some cognitive change there. And I kind of solely believe that the direction of 2K games going forward, as far as wrestling goes, we might see a little more innovation and just bringing back some of the old school stuff that we were used to, and like Here Comes the Pain and all those other stuff, because of the TKO deal, the Endeavor deal. We got different ownership or whatever, so they might be able to give up more assets to where, like, we have the same character models from early WWE games in these new games, and that's a travesty or whatever. There's no like graphical upgrades and shit, or body scanning with the people who are actively current on the roster and shit and whatnot. That makes no damn sense to me, to where, like, if the NBA made a change right now, probably within 24 hours, NBA 2K will have that change in the fucking video game. And they don't do that with the wrestling game, and that pisses me off.
I feel like it's probably easier to make a change in an NBA game. Like, you could probably color swap a jersey if you need to, whatever. Mm-hmm. My big issue is not like, oh, this guy's gone, this guy's come in. Wrestling games forever and for always will be behind when it comes to that stuff. I just want a little bit of innovation. That's all I want. I want, like, okay, you added the war games, but it was so buggy when it came out that, still, to this day, you get guys floating outside of the cage. Yeah. You got guys tangled up in the ropes and halfway through the ring.
I'm not with the referee.
Yeah, I'm not expecting them to start from ground zero, because we saw how long that took with AEW. Took like 3.5 years for a game to come out,
and still they have issues.
yeah. I'm not expecting a fresh start. We won't get a fresh start until someone else takes over.
Well, look,
but give me a little bit of something. Like,
this is what you do. You don't release this annually. You drop the fucking the freaking numbers on the end of it. You don't yearly base it or whatever. Do it every other year. That way, you can drop a game and you can provide at least 1.5 to 2 years of solid service to that game. And I believe overall they can, it would serve them better. It would serve us better, because they can give us a well-rounded, better game.
If they wanted to do yearly instead of dropping a new game every year, they could do bi-yearly, but then on the off year release like a big DLC bundle for the year.
Yeah.
I think yearly is detrimental to wrestling games. You're getting the same. It's the same thing with Madden. It's the same thing with the NHL games. Look at the UFC game. 5 just came out, it's the exact same game as 4.
That's why I don't buy them right off.
Nothing changed. Nothing changed. The entire storyline is the same. It's copy paste, and that just doesn't work for me.
And if you look at the FIFA games on Switch, they're using the same engine that they used 7 years ago. Literally, it's just a roster update, and they're charging $60 for it.
Whoa, you playing on the Switch?
Some people still do, but yeah, their FIFA games are like ridiculous. Like, I don't play FIFA, but I've read enough online to where it's literally the same engine for the past 7 years. All it is a roster update.
Yeah, that's how all these annual games are or whatever. That's why, like, I mean, other than this collecting shit, I can afford to skip out for years and just come back to it or whatever.
Yep. Now, for me, WWE 13, I've got 2 big memories from this one. One is this is pretty well the rise of CM Punk to the main event rather than this guy that's like on the cusp between mid-card and main event. Like, to me, when he hit the cover, that was a sign that he made it, because previous cover athletes, John Cena, Brock Lesnar, Triple H, it was nice to see a fresh face in the cover of a game.
Yeah.
And the other standout for me was the Attitude Era part of it. It was really cool to relive most of that. One of my favorite moments I knew wouldn't be in it, and that's when the Radicals came from WCW to WWF, and for obvious reasons they weren't going to put that in the game. But, like, for the rest of it, there was a nice highlight reel of stuff from the Attitude Era that was really enjoyable. Put that up against WrestleMania, the arcade game. Again, it's one of those games to where I really like because you can just sit down and play it. You don't have to put the game in, wait 30 seconds for a bunch of logos to flash through, get to a menu, go through a million menu options to finally get in-game, wait in the loading screen to get into the game. WrestleMania, you can literally drop the card in, you're in the main menu within 10 seconds, pick your characters, bam, you're playing. And you don't have to learn a bunch of mechanics. There is some to learn, but it's more of a fighting game mechanic style. You know, your special
Street Fighter type.
Yeah, your special moves are done much like they are in Street Fighter. I do enjoy the depth behind WWE 13, but that's also something that's available in 12, 11, or it goes back to the iterative thing. Whereas there's not a lot of games out there that offer WrestleMania offer. In Your House was brought up, and I actually did own that game for PlayStation 1. A similar engine, a bit more on the wacky side than WrestleMania was.
Mm-hmm.
It was enjoyable. I think it was a little bit more rushed than WrestleMania 2. It didn't have the polish that WrestleMania had. So between these two, I also have to give to WrestleMania the arcade game.
Beep, 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 beep. Also, Soups, when we get into the line of WWE 2K games and everything like that, there was a difference between WWE 2K15, I believe, to where the last gen version had NXT mode, and then the current gen version did not have the NXT mode, or vice versa.
So, being a gentleman with a long beard, the next gen consoles, all the beards were like skin tight, and that pissed me off because I could play the gen before and have a nice big burly beard.
So for our next roundup, we've got Galactic Wrestling going up against Fire Pro Wrestling World.
All right, this is a slam dunk for me. I'm picking Fire Pro Wrestling World. I don't have too much to say about Galactic Wrestling other than it is coming to my collection soon. The freaking, what is that, Kineman? I can't pronounce it. I just remember, I vaguely remember the character only because not of the games or the anime that is based on, I believe. But when I was an itty bitty kid, there was the muscle flesh colored wrestling men or whatever. Yeah. And I had those toys And I never knew what the fuck they were, other than little flesh-colored toys that I made beat each other up, and I thought was a pencil eraser at some point. So that's the only attachment that I have to this character outside of all the games that he produced, because he has games throughout your console cycle or whatever. I mean,
dating back to Famicom, way back.
Yes, I have versions from Famicom. I have versions freaking Super Famicom. I got Game Boy Advance, freaking the PlayStation 2. Just, it spans generations of consoles, and that's no small feat, you know. But Fire Pro Wrestling, which, you know, when we get to the next roundup in the bracket moving forward, I love to simulate wrestling games if I'm not playing. And Fire Pro Wrestling scratches that itch for me. It's with their freaking like GM mode and all that stuff, and it's highly customizable to where you can just customize everything down to the T for, you know, its art style and everything, and I can really appreciate that. But you know, you got community creations or whatever, and that's just top notch. But the thing for me that, you know, makes me pick Fire Pro Wrestling is just the sim factor to it or whatever. I don't even have to play. I can just set up a match, set up my GM mode, and just sit there and watch these computer characters fight each other, and that's like, I love that shit or whatever. So Fire Pro Wrestling for me.
I'm gonna have to agree. I mean, I picked Galactic Wrestling. It's a great game. It's fun. It's similar in style to like All Stars, a lot of over-the-top moves. But I just checked my PS5 like a week ago. My top played PlayStation game ever, since they've been keeping track of it, is Fire Pro Wrestling World. I have over 700 hours on that game.
Yes.
I mean, the edit mode, incredible. You can make your own moves. It's not easy, but it's super. It scratches every itch you could possibly want.
Mm-hmm. And if you can't figure it out, somebody else has in community creations.
Absolutely. You know, could they have made it easier with downloading, guys? Absolutely, for sure. You know, you go in, you're like, oh, I want AJ Styles. Well, you have to download his hair, you have to download his face, you have to download his attire logos, you got to download 15 different moves, and they're not all in one spot, so you got to go to a different page for each one, and it takes like 20 minutes to download the one guy you wanted.
Yeah. That's
my only gripe with it.
Same.
Fire Pro Wrestling, much like Galactic Wrestling, it's a dynasty, you know? Mm-hmm. Kinnikuman goes back to the Famicom. So does Fire Pro. They've been side by side up until PS2. I don't think there's a Kinnikuman game beyond PS2 right now.
No.
But, I mean, they've been together the whole run.
Yeah, I'm looking at a whole set above my head right now from Fire Pro Wrestling 1, 2,
The thing about
3.
Fire Pro is the legacy, beginning to end. If you can pick up the first game, you can pick up the last game. There isn't a whole lot of innovation in how it's played, but the improvements that they make are huge. And, I mean, it's just an absolute classic.
Yeah.
Certified hood classic. Banger. Fire through and through.
Yeah, and I mean, they know the audience, and they catered to it as well along the way, because I'm looking at Fire Pro Wrestling 3 in particular. People couldn't get the timing down and all kinds of other things or whatever, so they made a Fire Pro Wrestling 3 easy play to where they fixed a lot of those issues for people who are having stuff down with the timing and all kinds of other things and whatnot. Then you got like Fire Pro Wrestling X and then X Premium or whatever, which had some innovations and whatnot. So when people complained about these games or they had a gripe or issue with Fire Pro Wrestling game, they came out with a sub game for that same year, or they came out with those improvements in the next game going forward. And I can appreciate that.
No argument here on my side. Galactic Wrestling, I did have to look up footage for it. I didn't exactly have time to even emulate it. That being
game.
Yep. That being said, you can see the legacy behind it. And you can definitely tell from the art style that it's an Aki game as well. Again, could not play it. It looks pretty cool, though. That being said, Pretty Cool is going up against a juggernaut in Fire Pro Wrestling World. Because this is a game that you can literally do anything in. I have built rosters for like 80s WCW, 80s WWF, 90s WCW, WWF, ECW. You can literally build to your heart's content when it comes to your wrestlers, when it comes to the ring. You can customize the entrances. It's just, you can build exactly what you want. So if, you know, the latest wrestling game doesn't have the roster of your choice, you can just go in and make it yourself.
Mm-hmm.
That being said, on top of that, it's got awesome game mechanics. The first Fire Pro game I played was the first one that came out for the Game Boy Advance, and there's a learning curve. But once you get past that, it's so much fun to go and get into a match. And it's not a quick 2 or 3 minute fight either. A lot of these matches can go on for quite a while, because not only are you trying to beat your opponent, you're trying to get the crowd going, which makes a big part of your match results. Which is a feature that I don't think we see very much in a lot of the other games. So I have to give it to Fire Pro Wrestling World as well. That is another clean sweep.
Beep, 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 beep.
And then for the final match of round 1, we're looking at M. Dickey's Wrestling Empire, which I had to look this one up. I'd never heard of it, but it's apparently a mobile game.
Yeah.
So that was kind of interesting to see enter the top 16 versus WWF Raw. I chose the 32X version, but they play similarly between the Super Nintendo, Genesis, and 32X. The 32X does have slightly better graphics and an extra character.
So, this would be my thing here. So, I chose the M. Dickey Wrestling Empire game because it's like right now, I mean, it started as a mobile game, but as we speak, as we sit here and do this recording, it is available for Nintendo Switch.
Oh, I did not know that.
I own a copy. So, this guy made all his games from scratch. He is a solo developer. I think he based in the UK or some shit like that. But like, he has made a whole entire catalog of games independently, starting with 2D to where it ranges from professional wrestling to MMA to prison sims to the story of Jesus Christ.
He's got a school sim. Don't forget the school sim.
Yeah. All that solo developed by one person. And what I appreciate about his wrestling games is it co-ops all those things from all those other games into the wrestling game and whatnot. So he made an MMA game, and just like the mechanics that he produced and created for the MMA game, he brings those into the wrestling game, because wrestling and MMA is one and the same to an extent. With the prison simulator, you know, just imagine, you know, TV prison, or just, you know, what you assume what prison is, with shanks and all kinds of things like that or whatever. The weapons aspect of it is incorporated into the wrestling games. You know, just any innovation that he could create in another game that would be good to bring into the wrestling game that would enhance it, he has done that. And I believe just everything that he's created is really a culmination of the parts that he put into the wrestling game to make it what it is today. I started playing his games with Wrestling Revolution 2D on mobile, because that's where he primarily started, because his mandate was to make small pocket-sized games. You know, it didn't take up a lot of hard drive space. You can carry it around in your pocket on your phone or whatever. That was his mandate. That was a business model. But as the technology advanced and everything, mobile phones, you know, are everywhere, you know, but he wanted to expand upon that footprint and challenge himself as well. So he moved up into making 3D games, but they were still exclusively mobile. But once the 3D games started to branch out and get more popularity, that's when the Nintendo Switch dropped. And he was like, well, hell, the Nintendo Switch is like a mobile phone. It's like a portable platform or whatever. I want people to take me places as well. So he started to innovate and create for the Nintendo Switch platform and everything. And ever since then, it took him out of that mobile space into console space to where he can add and do more things to it, to where like now his characters can go backstage. It's all in 3D. They can daggone go to other places in the city and fight outside and do other things like that. Kind of harkens back to Here Comes the Pain and games in that like, to where he's doing that on an independent level, solo production by himself. And I go back to the Fire Pro World with his customization. I mean, he has that on a certain level or whatever, but you can only do so much with a solo production. But highly simable to where like all these games on this list, good. All the games that I voted for to go on to the finals and be champion, I always come back to Wrestling Empire. Always. Whether it be on my phone, on my computer, or on the Switch. I always come back to that game because it's so fucking fun. I have simmed so many games on it to where like a match can go literally 3 seconds, into where like I sim matches for 45 minutes and up. Just batshit crazy shit because these characters don't want to die. You know? So my pick, if you hadn't guessed it, Matt Dickey's Wrestling Empire. I ain't got shit to say about Raw.
Now, my biggest issue with M. Dickey is not with his games. It's with him personally. Okay. On Twitter, he's a bit of a knob. Before I get in trouble, he's done incredible work with his games. Phenomenal. His bedside manner needs a little work. I mean, the guy's added matches that don't exist in wrestling games. You got dog collar matches. Those aren't in any other games.
Nope.
The other thing with his games, though, I can play them. I can't play them well. I don't know what it is. There's a reason why you've got many hours of simming this game, because you're not playing it.
Yeah, this is true.
It's I don't know. It's a lot of punching and kicking, and then you'll get a grapple, and then you'll go to powerbomb a guy, and then he'll flip out of it, and next thing you know, that's it. That was all the offensive you're getting.
Yeah.
The computer's just putting a beating on you. That's it. Game over. Might as well close your system and go touch grass, because nothing's happening beyond that.
Yeah. The simability is just like amazing to me. And it's just like he incorporated a reversal system for every single thing in the game. You can literally reverse everything.
Do some of them make sense? No. I mean, like, are you turning a clothesline into a Canadian destroyer? Probably not, but I mean, hey, whatever, right? It's wrestling. It's supposed to be crazy and off the wall. And that's exactly what M. Dickey games bring. I've played them. They're not super enjoyable to play, but watching people play it
Yes.
is crazy. I'm sure we've all know about New Legacy.
Yes.
They've got tons of career modes where guys are dying in the ring because their arms and legs are being blown off by bombs. It's insane.
And that's like,
WWF Raw does not have anything like that.
not at all.
WWF Raw is fun. It's I think it's the first wrestling game with a female character.
Luna Vachon.
Luna Vachon.
Also, surprisingly, the music that is for her in Raw is actually never used for her in real life.
Wow.
So I thought it was kind of interesting. I looked for that theme because I actually liked the tune that they used for her in the game, and come to find out, she never used it.
The WWF games from the SNES, barring WrestleMania the arcade game, all play the same.
Yeah.
There's improvements, there's character changes, but whether you're loading up Super WrestleMania or you're loading up Raw, you're getting the same kind of game, which, if you've played one, you've played them all.
Yep.
It's kind of the same way with the MDickie games, but I've got so many memories with WWF Raw. I mean, you pick up the chair the wrong way, you're hitting guys with the feet of the chair, which is insane. Poking guys, and all you hear is it's truly a classic. I think I'm gonna vote. This is a tough one, actually. I didn't think it would be this tough. I think I'm gonna go MDickie, only based on the amount of innovation he's put into his game. The amount of innovation he continues to strive for. He's just, honestly, he's making wrestling games better. Do I wish I could play them and play them well? Absolutely. But that's probably not in the cards.
Yeah. And just like,
maybe one day he'll invent an incredible grapple system that changes wrestling games forever.
the easy play version.
Right now it's not at that, but he's getting my vote.
Yeah, and then like even with him, he has spawned but he's inspired other people to independently make their own content and wrestling games. So I can appreciate it even for that.
Well, for me, I downloaded Wrestling Empire and played it some, and I definitely did struggle with the controls. Visually, it looks amazing. I don't know how a one-person team pulled off what multi-person teams pull off in the mobile arena. I remember there was a TNA mobile game that was out for a while, and Wrestling Empire looks better than that TNA game. So, no clue how he pulled that off. Absolutely stunning. A lot of times whenever I was playing it, I wish I had a controller to use for it. And then you tell me there's a Switch version, so I probably need to look that one up.
Yep.
Putting it up against WWF Raw, to me, Raw is the pinnacle of the old-style button mash wrestling games. That style ended up dying with Raw. Absolutely loved it back in its era, though. Just had a great roster, had the addition of the Royal Rumble mode that was added in before. Loved the little small touches, like you could run into the referee to knock him out, and then you could go choke or eye gouge your opponent, or if he's about to count out your opponent and you don't want to win through a count out, just knock the referee out.
You turn around.
Yep. And then, of course, the referee gets back up a few seconds later. Oh, what happened? I rented this game so much as a kid, both for the Super Nintendo and the Sega Genesis. Not many differences between those two versions. The 32X version did look a little better, but that was one I didn't rent. I did actually have to go out and buy that one because my game rental store did not have 32X. I can't think of any game rental store that carried 32X, to be honest with you. But I'll give it to WWF Raw mostly for nostalgia and for the fact that it's probably the best you can go if you're going to just go out to play a button-mashing wrestling game. Now, that being said, whenever I say that, all those games from Super Met WrestleMania, Royal Rumble, to this one, whenever you did a lockup, the only way to win the lockup was to button mash. You had to continually tap that one button faster than what the computer could. On lower difficulties, it's not a problem. On the higher difficulties, hope you're using a turbo controller. But that is going to clear up round 1, which has us halfway through the tournament. Before we keep going, do either of you guys need a break or anything?
I need to piss.
TP time.
Gotcha. So we'll go ahead and pause this here, let everyone take a break, and then we will go into the quarterfinals.
It's WCW NWO Revenge, only on Nintendo 64. Nintendo Power says WCW NWO action is bigger than ever. Fans will eat this one up. Featuring over 60 of WCW and NWO superstars with custom finishes and trademark moves. 4-player Battle Royal mode with double teaming and more weapons than ever before.
Get addicted.
Call 1-800-WCW-8661 to order now. Also available wherever video games are sold.
Revenge is just too sweet.
Rated T for Teen.
This is the culmination of everything I've ever worked for.
This is my chance to live forever.
55,000 people are about to scream my name.
WrestleMania, it's fever, man.
WrestleMania 19, the video game.
This is where superstars become legends.
All right, and welcome back. We're getting ready to start the quarterfinals of the Retro Wrestling Game Tournament. Starting out with the number 1 seed, which is still hanging on, WWE All-Stars versus Def Jam Vendetta.
We done laid a lot of groundwork to get to this point. So now it's down to the nitty-gritty or whatever. WWE All-Stars versus Def Jam Vendetta. Ugh. So, fuck. So, for me, I didn't play Vendetta a lot. I played it in the sense of I owned the game only because it spawned Def Jam Fight for New York. So, I didn't play Vendetta as much. I think I've only played it from front to back one time, and that was many years ago, and I haven't touched it since. Def Jam Fight for New York, on the other hand, played it so much, played it on different consoles, played it from beginning to end, that story mode over and over against other people, just so much stuff. And then that game would spawn visually impressive Def Jam icon, but it's nowhere near the level or match of in-game playing quality as Fight for New York. Looks better, but does not play better. We don't talk about that
around here. We don't talk about icons around here.
Hey, man, visually stunning game. They just fucked up.
To look at. That's about it.
Yeah, that's it. That's it at all. I went back recently and tried to play it again, and just trying to remember how to fucking music scratch. Weird shit. Anyway, all that to say that between these two games specifically, we're not talking about Fight for New York, we're not talking about Icon. These two games specifically, I'm going to have to go with WWE All-Stars because it's brought me more joy than Vendetta. Not saying Vendetta is trash or anything by any means. It's just I have more attachment to All-Stars and just everything that it brings to the table that we mentioned previously.
I mean, that's fair. You know, it's these two games are strange because I don't have a whole lot of time in either of them. I've got more time in Vendetta than I do All-Stars. I've played through Vendetta. I mean, there's 3 guys you can pick. I've played through all of them twice, I think. All-Stars is, again, visually, that's what you want a wrestling game to be. The guys are over the top. They're huge. Even like Rey Mysterio looks like Steve Austin on a regular day. They're just giant.
Mm-hmm.
The thing is, though, that like Def Jam is a continuation of the Aki THQ engine.
Yeah.
And to me, I think Vendetta plays just a hair better than All Stars. So I'm going to give my vote to Vendetta.
Ooh, tiebreaker.
This is going to be a hard one for me because I like the gameplay better in Vendetta, but I like the look better in All Stars.
Go with your heart.
So yeah, this is a tricky one. Like Def Jam easily has the gameplay one out for me, but the look of All Stars is absolutely iconic. And I gotta ask myself, if either line went even further and was still going today in their styles, which game would I play? And the deciding factor isn't going to be a good one, but if I want to choose between my heroes in wrestling and my heroes in music, most of my music heroes are actually going to be in heavy metal rather than rap and pop. Even though I do enjoy that kind of music from time to time, I'm definitely more of a metal guy. And All Stars not only had their people from that era, but they had a few of the classic wrestlers from the past I really enjoyed. Stuff like Bret Hart. So for that alone, I gotta give it to All Stars.
Yoo-hoo!
Vendetta had better music, though.
Yeah, it did. Which will get
no
you,
argument.
which will get you DMCA'd on fucking Twitch. So
Yeah, well, can't stream that one unless you've got mute. I definitely do have to say Def Jam does have better music than All Stars.
Mm-hmm.
All right, next up in the quarterfinals, again, this one might be a harder decision one. SmackDown, Here Comes the Pain versus WCW NWO Revenge.
Well, it's not hard for me.
Oh, okay.
I am going to go with WCW versus NWO Revenge. Like I said, so much childhood nostalgia, so much attachment to that game. Like I said, this was the spark that started my pro wrestling video game journey and everything. It's the first one I go to emulate. It's just everything I want. Here Comes the Pain. I mean, I served it up for you in the last bracket or whatever. I mean, it was an innovator. And, you know, I wish games would have moved forward with Here Comes the Pain in mind, but, you know, we got what we got. But if you put them on the desk in front of me right now, which I literally could because they're above me to my right, I'm going to probably grab Revenge before I grab Here Comes the Pain. So that's why I pick WCW versus NWO Revenge.
Oh, the way I'm recording is my phone is currently sitting on my collection bookshelf. And I'm seeing everything. Thinking of what you just said, which would I reach for? I'm going to let you guys know my N64 is plugged in right now. My PS2, I don't know where the fuck it is.
Yo.
I don't even know where it is. I mean, it's pretty cut and dry, man. I'm going with Revenge. Like it's everything you want wrestling to be. It's fun. It's colorful. I mean, every arena looks different. You know, that's an underrated thing with wrestling games is how fun the set design is. All Stars, I don't know. If you ask me to describe what the outside of the ring looks like, no idea. Is there multiple stages? Couldn't tell you. Revenge, I know there is. I know there's, you know, Halloween Havoc. I know there's Nitro. It's just Bash at the Beach, man. What a great set.
Hell,
and
just
what a great game. Like,
just even the opening video.
No, incredible. Incredible. If you guys haven't seen the opening video, go watch it. You'll fall in love with it. Revenge all the way.
Well, this one will be a clean sweep then, because for me, I also have to go WCW versus NWO Revenge. Just a big thing for me for its time. We hadn't seen much like WCW versus NWO Revenge. I feel like that game was so innovative for its time. And it's still one that I'd be willing to go back and play. I'd be willing to go back and deal with the N64 controller instead of that awesome PlayStation 2 controller just because the game is that good.
Just like Soup said, man, like to my left, I just sent y'all a picture in the group chat or whatever. My Nintendo 64 is plugged up right next to me right now. It's ready to go. All I have to do is pop the cartridge in. PlayStation is currently tore apart on my desk, so I could do that if I wanted to.
I do like the, is that the Pro 8-bit Do controller that you got there?
Oh man, I just got that a couple days ago, and I did not know how sturdy and just beefy this controller is. I love this thing.
I was looking at one in Best Buy yesterday. I've got the Xbox Series Elite controller, or Elite 2 that I use normally, but it's getting kind of old at this point. I was looking at a new one. I was kind of eyeballing that one. So,
if as far as feel and weight, they are just about the same. The Elite is a slight bit heavier, but not by that much. When I took this thing out the box, I'm expecting like a light plasticky feel or whatever that you get from like maybe the Nintendo Pro controller or something like that. Mm-hmm. But when I pulled this thing out of the box and held it in my hands, it felt like the Elite controller to me.
I'll have to give it some more consideration then, because it's one I was kind of eyeballing.
It's good.
Fight Club?
So what?
Is that Fight Club?
It is. Outside of pro wrestling games, I have a small collection of shitty movie games.
There's plenty of those.
Oh yeah, so like I got Bad Boys Miami. I got Fight Club over there that you just saw. I got Catwoman. I got Reign of Fire, Aragon. Just some other shit. I got a Griff story from Jumper. You know,
some of those Terminator games, man, terrible.
I got Wanted, Weapons of Fate. Yeah, so I have enough. It's like it was unintentional, but I wind up just falling into like shitty movie games, especially since I can get them for like dirt cheap because nobody want them.
There wasn't a good Terminator game until like 2015 or 2016.
Yeah.
But which is a shame because I'm a huge fan of that series, but the game's not so much. That's still the only good game I can think of, the 2014 or 15 game. Going on to the next in the quarterfinals, we've got Rumble Roses versus WrestleMania, the arcade game.
Let me sum it up for you. Big old titties. Arcade game, love it. It is set the template for other wacky wrestling games going forward or whatever, but I just want to play with titties. So Rumble Roses for me.
I mean, like I said, WrestleMania arcade game, one of my all-time favorite wrestling games. It cannot be understated. Incredible. The thing is, though, we already have WWE All-Stars moving on, and All-Stars is a beefed-up version of WrestleMania, the arcade game.
Yeah.
I'm going to go with Rumble Roses, just to get a little bit of variety in here.
A little bit of flavor.
Exactly. Candy Cane, what's up? Give me a call.
Those women definitely look like they got some flavor.
Mm.
I'm going to have to go with Rumble Roses in this one, too. Again, we have the better version of WrestleMania, the arcade game, with WWE All-Stars. Again, I have to go back to Rumble Roses being, it has good mechanics underneath the eye candy. That's something I have to stress.
Big titty women slapping meat.
Absolutely. It's not just the meaty men. And then in the final one, the quarterfinals, kind of an interesting matchup with Fire Pro Wrestling World versus M. Dickey's Wrestling Empire.
Sorry, M. Dickey. This one's easy. Fire Pro all the way. No comparison in the two.
Yeah, you're right.
Everything M. Dickey does, Fire Pro does just a little bit better, whether it's creating, whether it's simming. I mean, M. Dickey, like I said, he's always innovating, but the only thing he's innovating in this match is an ass whooping on himself.
Oh,
Fire Pro's got it in the bag, and they're walking out the door, and M. Dickey is looking at his phone instead of the security camera.
God damn, he
Fire Pro has stolen.
He just cut a pro wrestling promo on this bracket. Fuck, man. I do agree with that. But Fire Pro has the added advantage of having a staff over one person just doing everything himself.
That's fair. That's fair.
Hey, man, regardless of how I feel about Fire Pro Wrestling World, I do thoroughly enjoy it. I mean, I'm back and forth with these two games. These two are my fallback. If you ever went to my Twitch back in the day when I was streaming or whatever, it was those two games, either Fire Pro or Matt Dickey. And with that being said,
maybe I can make it easier for you. You can play a Fire Pro game. You can't really play an M. Dickey game.
But I sim Fire Pro too, the same way I do that. So, I mean, for that reason alone and the batshit craziness of the thing, I'm still staying with Wrestling Empire.
Well, I'm not saying you're wrong, but
I like them both.
I also would have to go Fire Pro.
Boo!
Yeah, I'm sorry, man, but I love how...
I know.
I love the fact that with Fire Pro, it's so easy to get in there and make what you want. Mm-hmm. M. Dickey's is doing awesome work considering it's one guy.
Yeah, I understand.
But for the end user, Fire Pro is probably going to be the superior game.
Yeah, you're right. It's okay.
Sorry, M. Dickey.
Mad respect for what he's doing by himself. So we're at the semifinals, the final four.
Oh, shit.
And it's ended kind of interesting because we've got the big two from the Monday Night Wars in one match.
Oh, for real?
And the other match is two kind of independent wrestling games. So it's kind of interesting how this is played out here.
Soups, you can take the lead on this one.
Yeah. So, match one, semifinals, WWE All-Stars versus WCW versus NWO Revenge. That was a lot of versuses in there.
This one is going to be easier than All-Stars versus Def Jam. It's going to be easier than SmackDown. Here Comes the Pain versus NWO Revenge. It's going to be WCW. If, again... Not that it matters, but my N64 is hooked up. My PlayStation is not. But if they were both hooked up, both games running, controllers held out, I'm taking the N64. It's my childhood wrapped up in a blanket. It's a comfort. And, WCW was not blessed with wrestling games the way WWE has been. WWE, granted, they've been gone forever now, but you even look at the NES. WCW has one game. Yeah. WWE has 4. Mm-hmm. You look at the Super Nintendo. WWE has 4 again. WCW has 1.
Yeah. Game Boy.
Are they good games? No. But, I mean, when it reaches the N64, that's when the tides turn. Mm-hmm. I mean, granted, yes, there was Versus the World on PS1 before there was the N64 games, but N64 changed the way WCW is looked at. People go, the show was whack, but the games, man, the games.
I want to bring up I almost picked Versus the World for my 4 for the list, too.
It would have been a great choice. But would it have been better than Revenge? No. And neither is All-Stars.
Well, as much as I love All Stars, I can't counter or rebuttal any of that stuff. I mean, I agree whole. Once again, I bring this up. I skipped school to play this game. I could have threw my future in the trash behind the wrestling, you know. So with that being said, there's not too much to argue with. I'm going to go with Revenge.
These two games fight for me, at least. Both of them have the same strong area, which is the fun factor. They are both incredibly fun to play. That being said, I also got to go WCW NWO Revenge. I feel like it was more revolutionary whenever it came out than All-Stars was whenever it came out. All-Stars was definitely different when it came out.
Shot in the arm when it came out.
Yeah, absolutely. But WCW versus NWO Revenge, if WWE All-Stars was the shot in the arm, then WCW versus NWO Revenge was getting a full-on new arm.
It went from getting a flu shot to getting a steroid shot.
Right.
Brother!
So for the first time since the 82 weeks, WCW comes out on top. So the other semifinal is Rumble Roses versus Fire Pro Wrestling World.
Titties. That's all I gotta say. But nah, seriously though. It just see this is like ends of the spectrum here or whatever. It just depends on how you feeling that day. Do you want to see big old titties and scantily clad women, or do you want to sim a game or run, your own organization, creative and customize a character or some shit like that? I mean, it's really a flip of the coin in this situation, but it just depends on what you're feeling that day. So it's hard in this instance.
Easy, what's your words there?
I see what you're saying. Because had this been Matt Dickey versus Rumble Roses, I would have went with Wrestling Empire. But it's Fire Pro World versus Rumble Roses. You sorry sons of bitches. I don't know, man. Just looking at it, I'm gravitating toward the titties. But I know Fire Pro Wrestling is the better game. But the titties. I can't get away. Fuck it. I mean, I'll throw it on Fire Pro. I mean, it's just Rumble Roses it is what it is. It is what it is. I'm picking Fire Pro.
So Rumble Roses, fun game to play, fun game to look at. I mean, graphically, it's got Fire Pro beat. There's no doubt about it. Fire Pro is
the same
2D
forever.
Yeah, Fire Pro is 2D and Rumble Roses is very 3D.
Mm-hmm.
Sitting down though, if I had to pick, it's going to be Fire Pro. It's a game that I can play with anyone around. I don't have to worry about being slapped upside the head with a frying pan from the wife. Mm-hmm. I can play it with my nephew. I can play it with my grandpa. I can play it with anyone.
Yeah, with Rumble Roses, you can only play with yourself.
Playing with yourself in a dark room. That's all you're playing. Maybe, I don't know, you got a weird friend like me and he throws it on at a house party, like I said, but yeah, it's Fire Pro all the way. It's a legacy. It goes beyond one game versus another. You have, a young upstart in Rumble Roses, and trust me, I wish there was more than the 2 games. Because they do play great. They play amazingly. the embarrassment moves I could probably deal without, but whatever. But Fire Pro Wrestling World, it literally took, 40 years to get to where it is. And, it's got the New Japan license, the first time they've ever had a license in a Fire Pro game.
Yeah.
Just to push it up over that little peak that they were behind. And it's going to be tough to top for me.
Same thing here. Rumble Roses definitely gives you the bone with some meat on it underneath. However, Fire Pro Wrestling World, you get all kinds of meat on the bone. There's so much with that game as far as the customization, the depth of the actual gameplay mechanics. Mad respect to Rumble Roses for what it did, and for the fact that it made it this far in this tournament, which is really, really good for it. That being said, its time has come. I also have to go Fire Pro Wrestling World. Which means that our final match for this, WCW versus NWO Revenge, is going to be taking on Fire Pro Wrestling World. So we've got the pinnacle of the N64 style games versus a more modern title. I would still kind of call it retro, though, because it did come out a few years back, and it has more of a retro feel to it, too, with the 2D gameplay.
Mm-hmm.
So, for the final showdown, what are your guys' thoughts?
This one's going to be real hard. I mean, they've battled through everything to get to the end, and granted, whatever was going to be in the finals was going to be difficult. But, I mean, All Stars was one and done. Fire Pro, Wrestling World, they're saying this is the last one. They've said that before, though, so it's hard to say. I have almost 800 hours on Fire Pro Wrestling World. I have probably 20 hours on All-Star. I mean, the proof's in the numbers. It's Fire Pro for me, and it's going to be Fire Pro over pretty much anything they put in front of me.
So, WCW versus Fire Pro. I know you bring up an interesting point. Let me boot up my Steam here and see how many hours I got on Fire Pro.
I wasn't even counting my hours on Steam. I probably got another 300 hours on Steam.
It's piquing my curiosity. I need to see now. So much nostalgia with Revenge. Like I said, the Nintendo 64 is hooked up right here, right now, ready to fire off at a moment's notice. And here we are. I got my Steam pulled up and everything. And I'm a baby when it comes to Fire Pro Wrestling. I mean, according to Steam, I've only had 17 hours, but that's not counting what I may have had on PlayStation or whatever, which, I probably would be well into the 200-hour range, maybe. It's tough because one for me is controller in hand and I'm playing this game. The other is I'm setting up a bunch of prompts and I'm watching the game play itself. Which one do I get the most enjoyment out of? I mean, I do enjoy them both for different reasons, but if I put in Revenge in that console that's already plugged up and ready to go to my left right now, I'm going to be hyped for the rest of the day. I turn on Fire Pro, I'm going to set up a couple matches to sim and everything, probably download a couple of custom creations, and it'll be on in the background as I do other stuff, like maybe put this PlayStation 3 back to you. So, with that being said, with hands-on nostalgia in my heart, and playability in front of me, I'm going to go with Revenge.
That's a fair choice. I mean, obviously, it wouldn't have gotten to the finals if it wasn't a game worth playing. But, I mean, looking at Fire Pro, you got the all-around package. You can sim, you can play, you can create. You know, you can sim in Revenge. It's not great. You can sim in Revenge. Playing in Revenge is hands down a completely different experience.
Yeah.
But, you know, you can't create a guy. You can edit a guy, kind of, sort of, a little bit. But, like, Fire Pro Wrestling, if you want Mortis, you want Perry Saturn, you want Eric Bischoff, go and get them. They're available. You want Roddy Piper, go get him. He's available. If you want to book a match between Hulk Hogan and Kenny Omega, you're not doing that in Revenge.
But you can do all those things because the community that loves this game is keeping it alive currently. There's people out there with mods for all these things. There's an updated version of Revenge and No Mercy and all this stuff out there floating in the world currently in 2024. So where I can argue that you
those
can
are
get
mods and not No Mercy or Revenge. They're mods.
But what is community creation if not people making mods? I'm just saying.
This is a hell of a decision for me, too. Another thing I have to look at for Fire Pro, and I didn't even realize this until I just pulled it up on Steam, but to get the complete package, you can buy the main game for $30. But if
even less sometimes.
If you add up the cost of all the DLC for the game, it's an additional $169, making Fire Pro, if you want to play the complete version, a $200 game.
Yeah, that was one of the things. Yeah, that was one of the things I did not like about this iteration of Fire Pro or whatever, because I mean everything previous to that came in one game. You know, we weren't when the Fire Pro games came out. Granted, there was like really no marketplace or a DLC situation, you know, going about so much, but like this was a modern release to a classic game, which, you know, it suffered in that arena to where like they got the Joshi pack, then there's like the New Japan extras, and then there's this and that and this, and you know, I fell down that rabbit hole of getting all that extra content because I wanted a complete game, but that came over time. That's probably why on Steam or whatever I have the complete game, but that came through Steam sales. It came through deep discounts or, you know, humble bundles and shit like that. To where, like, you know, WCW NWO Revenge, pop it in, it's all there, baby.
I mean, if we're basing games off what's the cheapest to get, you can get a copy of Attitude or Warzone for PS2 for $1 at a garage sale. Doesn't make it a good game.
I didn't say that.
This is such a hard decision. Are you guys both locked into your votes right now?
Yeah, I'm locked in. I ain't going nowhere.
Yeah, I'm not switching either.
Okay. So I have to look at here. You have a game that's eminently customizable with Fire Pro where you can build what you want. Versus a game that is a direct punch in the nostalgia. Which, like, these games are almost perfect releases for their time. The other thing I have to look at, though, WCW versus NWO was definitely more talked about whenever it came out than Fire Pro was. Whenever Fire Pro came out, there was a lot of hoopla around it.
Hoopla!
But it wasn't getting, like, those big name. It wasn't treated like a huge release the way that WCW versus NWO was.
You're just in the wrong communities, brother.
And that could very well be. but then it turns into mainstream appeal. It is a hard choice, though, too, because, again, you can make Fire Pro Wrestling World what you want.
Yeah.
So, what I have to judge this on now is the actual gameplay. Do I have more fun with the Fire Pro Wrestling gameplay style, or do I have more fun with the WCW versus NWO gameplay style? All the other stuff is just extra toppings in the burger. The huge amounts of DLC, that's kind of a knock against Fire Pro. But the fact that Fire Pro didn't have the community supporting it as much as WCW did back in the day. Now, that's not a knock against the community, because there's a huge community around Fire Pro now. And I don't know if that's more of a thing of maybe there's a lot more people gaming now than there was back then. Because gaming, even in the N64 era, was more of an underground thing than it is today.
And then, like, you know, back then it was the console wars, console exclusivity, to where, like, not via the companies or gaming industries as well, it's just between people. I know people who are diehard Nintendo over Sega and PlayStation, or diehard PlayStation and didn't fuck with Sega and Nintendo, or, you know, just shit like that. So I don't know, that was a weird.
The other thing I kind of think about is that whenever you even go to a retro game festival, if they're doing some kind of a tournament, are they playing Fire Pro or are they playing WCW versus the World? Or, wrong game, WCW versus NWO. and that's a game that I still see played today. And as of right now, we don't know if Fire Pro Wrestling World is going to have that longevity or not, because it only came out like 7 years ago versus WCW versus NWO, which came out, are we talking like 26 years now?
I don't want to think about that.
And which is still being kept alive today.
So my final decision point, go ahead.
Fire Pro has had a community since the internet was a thing. I have a close friend of mine, shout out to James. He's been a moderator on Fire Pro Club since it was like bulletin boards. The first time I heard of Fire Pro Wrestling, I had dial-up internet and I was watching handmade animated GIFs of creator wrestlers of Rob Van Dam and Sabu flying off of the top of a stadium through tables. It was crazy.
And Fire Pro's been around for a long while too. Like I said, my first experience with it was Game Boy Advance, but it had been around a long time before I got that.
Yeah. What I will say in favor of Fire Pro over WCW Revenge is that there is a community that is vocal and still very active. I don't see Facebook pages made for Revenge. There might be, but like, there's just not a community for that game outside of. I don't know what I'm trying to say, but like, there's
because it doesn't make any damn sense.
There's a community for the Fire Pro games that isn't there for the Aki games. Outside of people going, man, you remember No Mercy? You remember Revenge? Man, those were fun. There's still a community.
But what I will argue, sir, outside of Fire Pro, because Fire Pro, I'll give it that. It is its own separate thing when it comes to the pro wrestling games. But for the longest time, as long as you can think, ever since, you know, virtual pro wrestling and freaking World Tour and freaking Revenge and No Mercy and WrestleMania 2000, what has just about every wrestling game, when it comes down to Mike Dickey and Rumble Roses in certain aspects and just other wrestling games, what is that common thread between all of them? They all try to emulate those Aki games. Till this day.
The problem is
they do it bad.
Most of them don't do it.
Yeah,
I got hopes up for UPW. They seem to be on the right track, but everyone that's tried outside of actually having the engine for like Galactic Wrestling and Vendetta, everyone who's tried fails miserably.
Yeah, and that's on them. I mean, but that what does that tell you?
I will say, nobody is out there trying to do what Fire Pro has done, and I'll tell you why. You can't improve on perfection.
Ooh.
Yeah. Hey.
Now,
I stand on what I said. I stand on what I said because, like, that goes down to even like when you look at controllers. You know, one console may be more popular than another, but the most emulated controller out there is Xbox. You know, so I kind of equate, you know, this game and the ones that came before it to that Xbox controller. Everybody has their version, their variant of it or whatever, but there's nothing like that Xbox controller, and that is revenge.
And here's what I have to go with. Fire Pro has an amazing amount of customization, and it does have that workshop community to where you can get whatever you want and turn the game into whatever you want. If it's not in there, you can make it yourself fairly easily. Whereas with WCW versus NWO, if you want to customize anything, you're going into ROM hacking, which is some crazy stuff. But if I just want to sit down and play a game, do I enjoy the gameplay more in Fire Pro, or do I enjoy it more in WCW versus NWO? Based off that, I have to go with WCW versus NWO.
Ooh.
That's fair.
But
I'm
that's
be honest,
such a hard decision,
one,
though.
Yeah, either one deserves the crown.
Yeah.
And, you know, Fire Pro, it's always going to be number one for me.
Yeah. And it is, like I said, it goes back to like what we were saying, and what I was saying in the last bracket, where it was Rumble Roses or Fire Pro, to where like it depends on how you feel that day. You know, that's really what it comes down to.
And for me, it's such a hard decision because I do enjoy the gameplay significantly in both of those. Like, both of them have awesome gameplay mechanics. So whenever I say WCW versus NWO, it's by a razor's edge.
I see what you did there.
Ha. But thank you for taking so much of your time from the day to come on here, discuss some fun wrestling games. Before we get ready to close this out, you guys want to go ahead and plug anything you want to plug? That doesn't matter. Podcast, video, YouTube channel, social media, whatever you want to do.
Well, I told you what I plugged before. That's why I was late. No, but seriously though, if you like what I'm talking about, I have a podcast that I've been doing for just about 8 years now. It's called the Random Rambles with Rob podcast. You can find it on just about any podcasting platform and YouTube. They got some interviews that I've done there. Most recently, I've been on hiatus for about a month or so, but we just did a recent recording with one of my community members from wrestling, where we talked about the New Japan Cup that is starting now. And we did our own brackets for that as well. So we broke down our picks, and we busted our brackets and all kinds of things like that. So that is available for you to see on YouTube by searching 3R Show, and here on any platform for podcasting by searching The Random Ramblings with Rob. If you want a taste of live professional wrestling talk, you can follow us Wednesday nights on twitch.tv/RBR Wrestling. We air after AEW Dynamite on Wednesday nights. So join us on Twitch. Subscribe for those notifications and whatnot so you don't miss out on those live shows. We're also available on any other podcasting platform that you can think of.
I don't have anything to promote.
Your collection.
If you got wrestling games and you don't want them, send them to me. Don't send them to Rob. I'm trying to beat him in numbers now.
Hey, fuck you.
If you love wrestling and wrestling games, check out my friend's podcast, the Game Marks Podcast. Every week, they cover a game, give it a rating of Play It Forever or Future Endeavor. Good guys. Love to see them thrive. So if you like wrestling, you like video games, you like wrestling video games especially, check out the Game Marks Podcast.
And if you would like to follow either Soups or B-Rob as they build their wrestling collections, you can go to the Secret Levels Discord, where both of them are usually plugging their collections on the wrestling chat page with new pickups that they get, and they pick some cool stuff up all the time. It's really interesting to go in there and see these games that I've never even heard of that they're coming up with.
Yeah, me neither.
That makes 3 of us.
Yeah. Yep.
But yeah, be sure to swing by the Secret Levels area, check out what they've got, drop a line, say hey.
Come on in the collection section.
And if you've listened all the way through this, I really hope you've enjoyed our retro game bracket. And thank you again for taking the time to listening. Thank you again, Soups and B-Rob, for taking time out of your day to record this. Really appreciate it. And that will close out the episode. Everyone, have a good one.